We are going live on YouTube. Subject matter here for this month, April, Conner Creek Greenway between Kercheval and Jefferson. We got cut off at when they did their plant expansion with FCA at first, and then it became Stellantis at the end. FCA is for Fiat Chrysler Automotive. So it was Chrysler at one time. It's Diamond Chrysler, then Fiat Chrysler Automotive, and now it is Stellantis. So I did a community agreement tour. So this recording is for the community agreement tour on the east side of Detroit. Showcase the ups and downs of that community agreement. And it was based on the new manufacturing plant being built in the neighborhood. The community got an agreement, entered into an agreement with the community for some benefits. But benefits ain't all that. And then some as far as it created a problem with air quality. That was the spinoff of getting the jobs with air quality for the people in the neighborhood. This is part of, but that's left of the Conner Creek Greenway between Warren and Jefferson down St. Jean has been used now for a parking lot for the plant. They built the plant alongside that park where that was at, where the engine plant was at, engine motor assembly plant was at. They extended that out, made it a full service uh, production plant, making a vehicle, and the biggest catchback or drawback rather, the drawback with that is the air quality from the paint plant. The paint is the problem. Yeah, when they spray paint, you got to release some odors in the atmosphere, even though they're not having people spray paint anymore. Machines are doing that, but still, you have to release the odors in the atmosphere, and they don't break down that easy. So people in the neighborhood is there's pawns in this chess game. They got the low end of the stick because the history of buyouts, the first buyout that I knew about indirectly, my sister was involved with that, was back in the mid 70s. So it'd be 1975 or 6. She had just moved out in 74. So that's the history of the buyouts. They did a buyout before because of the paint plant up there on Jefferson. It's between Mac and Jefferson. That's what the buyout was. They cleared all the houses, and she was living in an apartment building closer to that side street than Jefferson, but close enough that it was part of the buyout. So that was the first buyout I knew about. The second one, of course, was St. Jean. It was it's a bar I went to one time on St. Jean called a Black Bottom. I did that in the 80s when I went there. So that's about 20 years ago. So it might have been mid 80s that they did the buyout. So it looked like I was there before I left the job I had. I left in 89. So I looked like I was there before then. So anyway, it was somewhere in the 80s that they did. I went there for that bar was at on St. Jean, but they did a buyout for St. Jean for that same purpose. They did it all the way up to from Warren Avenue where the plant started at. Back then it was just the motor plant. So when the odors come out from the motor factory, you paint that. You do paint the motor, but I don't know if it's come already pre-assembled, already painted, then you just put it together. A lot of parts they come already pre-assembled, already ready to be assembled, put back together as a motor. So they come separate, and they might be painted before they got to the factory. for assembly, to be assembled. So that became the bike. We was in this bicycle group with Chandler Park. We used to ride that Greenway from Warren to Jefferson, and that's the length of the plant at that time. It still is between Warren and Jefferson. It's the length of the plant, with the exception of Mack, which is the street that goes through where both of the plants are at. But there's a railroad yard underneath the Mack Bridge that connects the plant. So you're on the lower part of that part. You'll see the rail yard. So that's why the street went straight on through Mack Avenue. And I think one street cuts off. And I think that's Kercheval. Kercheval you cannot cut through. That's how it was before they did the buyout. So you come all the way up there in Kercheval, and you would be in the plant. And if you came all the way up there at Kercheval, you'd be in the plant. So that's how that went down. So, having said that, that's where I know that a buyout was probably needed, because it had berms up. It had big mounds of dirt, a berm, which is a lot of dirt. There's some trees that suck up pine trees that suck up the odors from the plant. Help with doing that. They didn't have a whole lot of vegetation around. They had a lot of grass that was cut. They had a pathway though. They went from Warren to Jefferson, so they did create a pathway, which is a sidewalk. It was different than the sidewalk that was when business was there. It's a little bit more farther in. So you had a bigger berm going towards the street. The berm to the street was a little bigger. So that got sacrificed all the way up to Kercheval. So that's where you pick up on the second part of it. What's left of the berm is between Kercheval and Jefferson. Even got one sign that's still left, I think it's 2 miles to the river, Conner Creek Greenway. So it's still one sign that's still there, so that you know that the Greenway ran through there. And that's the backstory on the Greenway. They did not do a buyout after doing 2 buyouts because of one paint plant up there on Jefferson. Now they bring another paint plant in the neighborhood. Now you got 2 paint plants. One up on Jefferson, where the Jefferson Assembly is at. Then one down here where the Mack plant is, called the Mack plant, where they have another assembly at that plant. So the plant is between Warren and Mack. On the other side of Mack, see a whole lot of trucks coming in that. So that's the dividing street, is Mack Avenue. That's a street they did not cut off. So you still cut through there. They got 2 entrance points. Entrance point at Mack going towards Warren, and entrance point at Mack going towards Kercheval. Probably Charlotte Ball and Burners come before the Kercheval. You got a couple more streets that come before Kercheval. A lot of streets are cut off because of the plant. So therefore, we knew that a buyout was needed, but it was a rush job to get this done, because the threat was that we don't get it done in a quick manner, that the plant would be built somewhere else and not in the city of Detroit or the state of Michigan. That was the threat behind it all. So it got done, bum rush job. The community agreement ended up being a joke, because the first time around, they were doing a raffle for people to get into the community agreement. I'm not in favor of someone have to put their house in their name when you're dealing with a community agreement that's not based, that's from a corporation. It's not a government deal. When you got grant money from the government, this is agreement money. I call it guilt money for getting that big tax break. So that's why they name it guilt money. But they get the big tax break, and they enter to these agreements in some cases, not all cases, but in this case it did. Then other part of the agreement was they had other parts of the agreement other than just home repairs. They ended up putting the park out there on Beniteau Park. Educational park because it's next to the school, so they got open area and it's got a big retention pond in it. It built down. I don't know. That's some might be 80 feet deep, but it's very deep. They put signage up around it, a fence up around it first, make sure no dogs or people get in there or animals. We could have other animals that walk around. Let's see, with four legs. A cat can get in there, a squirrel can get in there, but we do have deer. They sometimes pop up in the neighborhood. They can't get in there. And it's educational science around it, so it's supposed to be for the benefit of the school, but at the same time, the plant is still giving out bad odors next to not one school but two schools. Then I seen down Benito one time they had plans on knocking down an apartment building. They bring back the apartment building, and they don't tell people that make investments in that on that block Benito that they're gonna have to be dealing with some odors. I think they should have full disclosure of that, especially people moving in that's new to the neighborhood. They should have to find out by word of mouth in the neighborhood for someone. That should be an area where they don't offer no permits to build, but they did with these investment groups that buy houses up, jack up the price of rent so they can get their money back with their investment in the house. They might throw 30,000 in the house. So it take a while to get the money back, but they jack the price up. So people go from paying $500 to $1,000 a month rent. Same property, same neighborhood, just going through an investment group, which is a bad deal in itself. But that's part of the deal. We're going on down Benito. The people in Fairview getting it too. Fairview right next to Benito. You got housing over there. That's where the school. So they said they put some ventilation system in the schools, make it better. But you know, most schools now they don't open up no windows. Everything is central air conditioning, heating. So everything is through the duct work. So maybe they did the same for the other school. I don't have any information on that. Not quite sure how that worked out. But looked like they would have because one is elementary school and one is high school. And another school over here farther down is another elementary school, but it's a little farther down from the plant on Campfield. So that's the backstory of the berm. The berm is there because of the paint pollution from the plant up on Jefferson. They did a buyout one decade. And a few decades later, they ended up doing probably from the 70s to the 80s, so another decade or so later, they do another buyout. So the 20 years to take it back to the 90s. This is 2020. So it might take it to 99. So maybe 2 decades later, they did another buyout from the 70s to the 90s. You're talking about the second buyout. Yep, it had to be the 90s. When they did the second buyout. Not the 80s, but the 90s. This is 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, and it's 25 now. So it had to be the 90s. They did the buyout. It was St. Jean for that reason. Not on St. Jean, but yeah, on St. Jean for that reason. Yeah, on St. Jean for that reason. Because of the paint plant up on Jefferson. So that's a problem that we have that they didn't do the next buyout. And that's the backstory of that berm. That's why it was there, because of a buyout. So with that, we will say saw, which is bye in the Mindi language.